welcome. I am so glad we can open Mark chapter 7 together today. This is such a rich passage, one where Jesus confronts man-made religion head-on, reveals the true internal source of sin, and then extends his mercy in some pretty unexpected ways. So let's dive into this with a real desire to understand what the text has for us. Now, before we even get to verse 1, it is absolutely crucial that we understand the setting. You see, all of the events in the Gospels take place during what we call the Age of Law, that period governed by the Mosaic Law, which was given specifically to the nation of Israel. The church as we know it simply didn't exist yet. Jesus' primary earthly mission at this point was to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Keeping this context front and center is the key to correctly interpreting his words and his actions, especially in this chapter as we see him interacting with both Jews and Gentiles. So here's our roadmap for this study. We're going to start with a really interesting question about tradition, and then we'll explore Jesus' teaching on the heart. From there, we'll look at an incredible encounter with a Gentile woman, witness a powerful work of divine mercy, and then we'll wrap it all up with a summary and a blessing. So, our first section, a question of tradition. The chapter kicks off with a delegation of Pharisees and scribes traveling all the way from Jerusalem. And, they're not coming to learn from Jesus. No, they're there to challenge him, to try and entrap him. And what's their point of attack? A disagreement over ceremonial hand-washing. Now listen closely to their accusation. The charge isn't about basic hygiene or being physically dirty. That term, defiled hands, refers to a violation of ceremonial purity, a purity that was based on the tradition of the elders. This was this massive, complex web of man-made rules and rituals that had been piled on top of God's actual law over the centuries. So from their point of view, by ignoring these traditions, Jesus and his disciples were being spiritually reckless. And this leads us right into our second section, the defilement of the heart. In what is just a masterful pivot, Jesus takes their accusation and turns it right back on them. He completely shifts the focus away from external things like hands and cups and pots to the internal reality of the human heart. He uses their own question to expose the deep, deep flaws in their entire religious system. This statement right here, this gets to the absolute core of his teaching. With these words, Jesus just sweeps away the entire foundation of their focus on ceremony. He's declaring that true spiritual defilement has nothing to do with your diet or your rituals, not what you eat or what you touch. No, it's an internal issue, something produced from within. True uncleanness is, and always has been, a matter of the heart. And this brings us to a crystal clear biblical statement on what theologians call hamartiology, the doctrine of sin. Jesus gives this sobering and frankly exhaustive list of what comes from within, out of a person's heart. He's showing us that the heart itself is the factory of wickedness. And that's exactly why external rituals can never solve the problem of sin. You see, you can't fix a polluted spring by just putting a new coat of paint on the well pump. You have to deal with the source. Now we move to our third section, a crumb from the table. And here we're going to see a really key distinction between God's program for Israel and his program for the Gentiles. Jesus actually travels out of the Jewish area of Galilee and goes into the Gentile region of Tyre. This geographical shift is so important because it sets the stage for a really remarkable test of faith for one very desperate woman. Okay, we need to be very careful to understand this next part. When Jesus says it's not right to take the children's bread and give it to the dogs, he is not being cruel. He is stating a profound theological reality of his earthly ministry. At that specific time, the children were the nation of Israel, and the bread was the messianic blessing he was offering to them first. The term dogs was a common, though harsh, term for Gentiles, who were outside of that specific covenant relationship with God. So his statement actually affirms the priority of his mission to Israel. But as we're about to see, this woman's response shows us that God's mercy can extend far beyond that primary mission. Her reply is just stunning. It's incredible. She doesn't argue with him. She doesn't dispute his point. She completely accepts her position as a Gentile outside the covenant. And she essentially says, I agree, Lord, you're right. But I have such faith in your goodness that I know even a single crumb of your power is more than enough. This is a faith based on nothing she had to offer, not on merit or heritage, but purely on the character and the mercy of Christ. And because of this incredible faith, her daughter was healed instantly. And this brings us to section 4, the work of divine mercy. Jesus moves from Tyre to another area that was largely Gentile, the region of the Decapolis. And there, a crowd brings a man to him who is deaf and has a severe speech impediment, and they are begging Jesus to heal him. Mark, in his gospel, actually preserves the Aramaic word that Jesus spoke. Ephphatha. It means be opened. And hearing the actual word adds such a powerful immediacy to the story. With just a single authoritative command, Jesus literally reorders creation. The man's ears are opened, his tongue is freed. You have to understand this isn't just a healing, this is a creative act. It's a demonstration of his deity, and it's a direct fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy that the Messiah would come and open the ears of the deaf. And now for our final section, summary and blessing. Let's just take a moment here to consolidate the key theological truths that we have seen in our study of Mark chapter 7. As we look back over the chapter, 3 key areas of theology really stand out. First, we have Christology, the doctrine of Christ. We've seen Jesus' divine authority over man-made tradition, over demons, and over physical illness itself. Second, we see soteriology, the doctrine of salvation. That Gentile woman provides us with this beautiful, perfect picture of salvation by grace through faith alone. And third, hamartiology, the doctrine of sin, where we learn that sin isn't an external issue at all, but a deep problem that originates from within the corruption of the human heart. The chapter ends with the verdict of the crowd. They simply said, "He has done everything well." You know, that simple statement is such a profound summary of Jesus' work. It actually echoes God's own declaration way back in Genesis, that all of his creation was very good. And here, in Jesus, we are seeing the beginning of a new creation, a work of restoration to make all things right again. And now, may this blessing be upon you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. For more in-depth studies, visit the Grace and Knowledge series blog at Brohm Online.